Kick-Ass 2 is an incredibly disappointing movie. It's the sequel to a much better film that was based off of a pretty good comic series by Mark Millar. The movie is basically about the continuing adventures of Kick-Ass and Hit Girl as they try to become part of something bigger in the underground superhero world, while also trying to balance their personal and super lives. Meanwhile, Chris D'Amico puts together his own team of supervillains to exact revenge on Kick-Ass after Kick-Ass defeated Chris's dad in the first film. I've been wanting to make a review about this since I saw it at the midnight release in 2013, but I wasn't nearly as competent at video making as I am now. Honestly, I forgot about this movie, even though I've seen the first movie several times since the sequel came out. But Kick-Ass 2 is so stupid and wildly different from its predecessor that it almost feels like a cheaply made fan film, which in a way, it kind of is. The first movie was directed by Matthew Vaughn, who has a pretty great track record as a director. He directed X-Men First Class and both of the Kingsmen movies. One thing Matthew Vaughn excels at is his coherent storytelling as well as his visual style. His action sequences are pretty badass, and he was the perfect director to make a Kick-Ass film. He worked close with Mark Millar to make a quality adaptation of the comics. He couldn't even get a studio to finance the movie, so he raised the money from independent investors and basically made himself a little indie movie with mainstream actors in it. It's one of my top films because it's so engaging and witty. All the humor is organic and it helps you like the characters despite their flaws. Overall, it's a great movie. It's so great that it made almost $100 million in the worldwide box office. It was well received by critics and was considered a very successful film. And then Universal bought the rights to a sequel and, well, that's when it all started to go downhill. Right after the first movie came out, it was announced that Matthew Vaughn wouldn't be returning to direct a Kick-Ass sequel because he was hired to direct X-Men First Class instead. And as a 15-year-old kid, I didn't really understand why that was actually a big deal, because Kick-Ass is a Matthew Vaughn film. It was made by him and a team of filmmakers that just put so much love and effort into it. I also didn't realize that Universal now owns the rights to Kick-Ass, and so not only did they produce this film through their production company, but they also distributed it. So it's just a Universal film now, which again, at the time didn't really mean much to me. The second installment of the comic ran from October 2010 to March 2012, and I read all 7 issues after they came out. I don't really read many comic books, but the first Kick-Ass movie inspired me to read both miniseries. And I know I was just spoiling the second movie for myself by reading the comic, but ultimately I had a better time reading the comic than I did watching the film. Back then, I didn't look up information about the cast and crew on IMDb and see what they'd done in the past, but I should've. If I had, I would have discovered that a man named Jeff Wadlow was hired to direct the film. Having never directed anything substantial other than the street fighting movie Never Back Down and some low-budget horror movie called Cry Wolf, he seemed like a strange candidate to carry the torch of a newly established franchise into its second installment. But I guess Universal had enough faith in him. So much faith that they gave him $2 million less than the first film's budget to make the sequel on. So right off the bat, you've got a relatively new director who makes schlock in charge of this film. Then you gotta look at the cast. Spoiler alert, Nicolas Cage died in the last film, so he's not returning. In fact, a lot of the Mafia guys in the first movie died as well. That's why the finale of that movie is so fucking awesome. So with the Mafia guys gone, what do you have left? You got this guy, who I think was on The Sopranos or something, Aaron Taylor Johnson, who just hyphenated his last name to inconvenience people, Chloe Grace Moretz, who actually has 3 names, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who was just a normal kid with parents who couldn't settle on one last name. Why do they all have 3 names? Christ, even the cinematographer has a hyphenated last name. What's going on here? So we basically waited around for 2 years and heard nothing about them making a Kick-Ass movie. One of the writers said that it was possible that they wouldn't have even made a second Kick-Ass, but somehow it got the green light and they made it. And then that's when they started releasing trailers for the film, and we got to get our first glimpse at the best actor in the movie, unfortunately, Jim Carrey, one of the most prolific comedy stars of the 1990s. And you think, hey, maybe this could have potential, you know? The first movie did an excellent job of making Nick Cage look like a badass as Big Daddy. Maybe we'll get a great performance from Jim Carrey in a similar vein. Oh no, just kidding, he's only in the movie for 10 minutes. Admittedly, his character isn't that big of a part of the second comic book series, but still, why go through all the trouble of getting a big star to barely be in your film? Especially if he's just gonna bitch about the gun violence and opt out of the movie's press tour. Did they just want to trick people into seeing this movie? Well, they did, and it worked. Those motherfuckers.
Henceforth I'll be known as the motherfucker.
Oh god, this movie ruined that word, didn't it? So much cringe in one film, I swear to god. So now we've got a studio-made film that's a sequel to a highly praised and financially successful film based off of a successful comic series. but one of the biggest stars from the first movie is gone, and they've got a completely new writer-director who has only previously directed 2 mediocre films. And on top of everything, they have a smaller budget than the first film. This'll go great, right?
Wrong.
I'm not gonna try to make too many comparisons to the comic book, but there's no guarantee that I won't go overboard with it at the same time. Also, I'm gonna spoil the shit out of the first movie in the comics, so you have officially been warned. So the movie starts out with an opening scene that's supposed to be a callback to the first movie. Instead, this time there's no Nick Cage, so it's automatically worse by default. In the original movie, the scene with Nick Cage was referenced by a lot of audience members who saw it in the trailer and partially influenced them to actually see it in theaters. So when you throw it into the cold open of this movie, it just seems like a forced and unnecessary callback. It's like it was written by the member berries.
Hey, remember the bulletproof vest scene from the first movie? Oh yeah, I remember.
The movie then attempts to explain the exposition through narration, but it's so poorly handled and badly written that I was immediately triggered in the theater. To give you some context, the first comic ends up with Dave and Mindy beating Frank Genovese, whose name is Frank D'Amico in the movie. It's different, don't worry about it. And Dave ultimately gets rejected by Katie Doma instead of them becoming a couple halfway through the story like they did in the first movie. Admittedly, it's a much darker ending, but it helped keep the story grounded in reality. If you were a girl in real life, it would be really creepy if a guy lied to you about being gay to take advantage of your pity after he gets hit by a car. But in the movie, she just kind of brushes it off since she wants to bang a superhero, I guess. Also, the Kick-Ass character looks nothing like he does in the comics, so obviously, who wouldn't want to bang that guy? But Matthew Vaughn changed it to them becoming a couple and having a happy ending. And their relationship works for the first movie because it adds tension during the climax of the film. And as a result, they had to do something to handle the inconsistencies between the comic and the first film. And they did it so poorly. First of all, the second comic series takes place 6 months after the first, and the second film takes place 3 years after the first one did.
And in the 2 years since the first ordinary citizens donned capes and masks, the movement has started to spread.
Oh, my mistake. It's actually 2 years. Whatever. Are we really supposed to believe that Dave is just a high school sophomore in the first movie? For the purposes of this review, I'm gonna go with 3 years just to make my argument simpler. Mindy is 12 in the first film and 15 in this one, but in the comics, Hit Girl is 12 the entire time. Why the fuck is there a giant time jump? Some executive must have been like, well, the movie was released 3 years later, so obviously we need an excuse as to why all the actors have aged. That would be fine, except why the fuck is Dave still in high school? It never actually says how old he is in the comics or the movies, so I guess Jeff Wadlow is like, yeah, this actor who is obviously an adult can still pull off being a high schooler when he's actually 24. That won't look weird or anything. So he's a senior in high school, but he's this fucking ripped? Okay, sure, whatever. It still doesn't explain the 3-year gap. He should be graduated by now if it's been 3 fucking years. I guess the director also wanted to adapt the Hit Girl comic series into this film and figured this would be the best way to make up for the fact that Chloe Grace Moretz isn't a 12-year-old girl anymore. Honestly, they kind of fucked themselves by taking so long to make the second movie. The film also addresses the Katie and Dave relationship, but I'll get into that later. Hey, look, kids, it's Turk from Scrubs. He's also in the movie. That's exciting, right? One of the more subtle but still disappointing things about the sequel is its lackluster soundtrack. The first movie had an awesome soundtrack full of great songs and an original score that stood out from other movies. For example, this is the song they started out the movie with. I mean, what a great choice, right? It's catchy, and it helps set the mood. You know what, I'm just gonna keep playing this song because it's so damn good. So Dave catches Hit Girl leaving school one day, and then he's like, I want to be a superhero again, even though it's been 3 years and I shouldn't be in high school anymore. And she's like, dope, let's do it. I'm gonna kick the shit out of you. That's how I'm gonna train you. You know, now that she's not an elementary school kid anymore, her being able to fight and swear isn't as charming as it was in the first movie. Hey, where's my boyfriend? Oh look, it's the opening scene of the movie. Let's just remind everyone how badly this film is edited by throwing it into a montage. To give you a little bit of context, the scene of Hit Girl kicking Dave's ass is the opening scene of the second comic series. They get out all the necessary exposition and they don't waste time with the high school shit. But since this is also based on Hit Girl's comic series, we also need to establish all that other bullshit as well, right? I think this is one of the major points where Jeff Wadlow fucked everything up. I mean, who gives a shit that they're still in high school? The last film literally ends with a high school kid blowing up a mob boss with a fucking bazooka. They spend so much time on the high school aspect of the story that it's just so frustrating. frustrating. The movie reintroduces Chris D'Amico, who is teased as being the motherfucker in this film at the end of the last one. Look at how awesome that costume is. Too bad it's not in this movie. Then he yells at his mom because he's a privileged little shit, and then somehow he accidentally kills her. Isn't this scene hilarious? By the way, that doesn't happen in the comics either. They just made that up for the movie. There's a scene in the Hit Girl series where he shows up and takes all his old shit, but his mom is fine at the end of it. There's no initial incident that shows that he's capable of killing. I guess that was necessary to establish for the character in the movie, for the audience watching the movie that hasn't read the comics or whatever. It was just a dumb way of handling it. Oh, look, kids, it's John Leguizamo, who wasn't in the first movie, but according to this movie, he's an important member of the D'Amico crime family. Okay. Hit Girl gives Dave a speech about why she wants to still fight. It's because of her dead dad. And she keeps calling him my daddy.
My daddy was never afraid of dying. My daddy was the first real superhero. Not you or Red Mist. It was my daddy.
Look, I know you're still a child without a father, but at some point you gotta stop using the phrase daddy and start using the phrase dad. So it's a lot less creepy. So she goes home and her stepdad's like, I know you weren't at school, you're grounded. The motherfucker finds his mom's BDSM gear and decides it's perfect for his supervillain costume. You know, instead of just reusing the Red Mist costume that he already has, like in the comics. Because, you know, that would just make too much fucking sense. So then there's a scene where Hit Girl and Kick-Ass attempt to trap these thugs by having Dave dress up like a pimp. They beat the shit out of them because that's just what happens in these movies. Gotta love that shaky cam and poorly edited fight scene. I could totally tell what was happening the entire time. And action! Cut! I mean, I think we got it. Looks great. Let's go to launch. But they almost get caught by the police who show up. But then they don't, and she races home to prevent her stepdad from catching her. But then she gets caught in the dumbest way possible.
Is that blood? Damn it, Mindy.
And then he's all like, you gotta stop being a hero. And she's all like, ah, drat. The next scene is so cringy that I just need you to watch it to see exactly why.
You can't just quit. This is who you are.
Not anymore, Dave. I'm sorry, but it's over. I'm done. Just leave me alone.
You stop apologizing.
I don't know what's worse. That you're fucking a 9th grader?
Whoa,
or that you
whoa.
just got dumped by one?
Pedophile freak.
It's not like that.
And what is it like? Please, tell me.
I can't. It's to do with this thing.
I've got a secret for you. You remember Malik?
Dude who volunteers at your needle exchange?
His baton is so much bigger than Kick-Ass's.
No.
And by baton, I mean penis.
Yeah, I got that.
So that's how they handled Dave and Katie never actually being a couple in the comics. With this awful and awkward scene where he gets accused of banging a 15-year-old. Maybe this would be convincing if adult actors weren't having this argument and it was actual high school kids. But then the movie just forgets that Katie exists and they move on.
Henceforth, I'll be known as the motherfucker.
Kick-Ass meets up with another wannabe superhero from the internet, and then they get attacked by a group of thugs because movie. Red Mist robs a gas station but does a really poor job. Get it? Because he's an idiot? And also because he's rich? So Kick-Ass tries to get Mendy to join him on the streets, and she's all like, nah man, I'm grounded, fool. And then we're introduced to the Justice Forever team. And instead of writing a single scene where they introduce all the characters and give their backstories, since they're honestly just minor characters in the movie anyway, the movie decides to cut away to an awful scene about high school drama shit. Hit Girl goes over to the bitchy girl's house because somehow teenagers can still be forced to hang out with each other by their parents. They make a bunch of jokes about how they love to fuck people because high school. That's what you do in high school. You fuck everything that moves. And then they put on a music video of a boy band and it makes them all horny. Okay. Let me just stop right here. This music video looks kind of real, doesn't it? Almost like it's not even actually playing on that prop TV and it's just green screened in. Well, the reason it looks real is because it fucking is real. It's a blatant product placement for a British boy group called Union J. I mean, you can't make this shit up. This is part of why this movie sucks. Why stop the movie to have a really ham-fisted advertisement for this shitty band that nobody cares about? I guess it's supposed to awaken some sexuality in Hit Girl now that she's 15. And by the way, this is completely just made up by the screenwriter. There is nothing that even resembles anything close to this dumb storyline in any of the comics. Well, since she watched one music video, now she's in The Boys. Fuck it, whatever. I was already done with the movie by this point, and it's not even 30 minutes into the runtime. They're like, hey, you should be part of our cool kid crowd, and you know, she wants to feel included, so obviously she says yes. Then we get to an oddly placed tonal shift where two of the characters in the Justice Forever team explain that they only became superheroes to avenge the kidnapping of their son. Hey, wasn't there another giant motherfucker in the comics that was also on the team? Nah, fuck that. Let's just write him out so that we can give Jim Carrey the spotlight. So then Colonel Stars and Stripes shows Dave the layer and invites him to join the team. Well, I know I just met you guys about 15 minutes ago, but sure. Hey, look, kids. It's real-life UFC fighter Chuck Liddell training Red Mist how to fight. So Red Mist is a little bitch and doesn't know how to fight, and that's the joke. So instead, he decides to hire the black dude that's kicking his ass, and oh shit, it's Daniel Kaluuya. He was the protagonist in Get Out. Why the hell is he in this shit? I guess it's better than Johnny English Reborn. Jesus Christ. So Red Mist calls him Black Death, and the movie just brushes off the racism.
Black Death.
Whoa, you don't think that's just a little bit incredibly racist?
I don't give a shit.
Gotta love it. Oh, great. Another scene with the high school bitches. They're having dance tryouts or something, and then they sign up Mindy to audition against her will, I think. But since she doesn't know how to dance, she just mimes fighting a bunch of invisible ninjas. Was that supposed to be, like, impressive or something? I mean, she didn't even dance to the music, so if that's all in her head, what did her dance look like to everyone in the audience? Like thrash moshing? So one night when Justice Forever is out helping the citizens of the city, Night Bitch is like, yo, Kick-Ass, you wanna fuck? And Kick-Ass is like, LOL, sure. Hey, maybe we should establish chemistry between them before this moment? Nah, fuck it, let's just move on. I mean, do you see what I mean? The writing is just so fucking lazy in this film. But I guess they needed them to be in a relationship for other shit that happens later on, so fuck it, right? Dave finds Mindy at school and is like, yo, you should really join Justice Forever. And Mindy's like, nah, dude, I'm just gonna bang this dumb jock instead. Wow, what a great scene. We finally get to the first scene in the movie to establish Dave and his father's relationship. It's honestly kind of annoying that the movie took this long to getting around to his character. I mean, we're 40 minutes in at this point. His dad is suspicious of Dave sneaking out at night, but Dave poorly lies to his dad and brushes it off. And they spend so little time on it that it just makes you think, is this gonna be important later, or do they just feel like throwing this in too? The Justice Forever team goes to confront a gang of guys who run a prostitution ring and also like to gamble. Colonel Stars and Stripes' dog has apparently been trained to eat dicks. Okay, sure, fine. They break in, they beat up the gang members, and oh shit, is that Benedict Wong? They tricked him into being in this movie too? Ha. It's funny because the dog is biting him on the penis and inflicting bodily harm. Animal abuse is so funny. Well, they let him live and they release the prostitutes and they give him $50,000 of the gambling money. Gee, that sure was convenient. So Red Mist starts recruiting people to be in his supervillain gang. They hire this fat Italian guy from the first movie, a large Russian woman named Mother Russia, who is basically just a stereotypical muscle character from an Indiana Jones film, and an Asian dude who they named Genghis Carnage. Yay, more casual racism!
You gotta quit with the racist stereotypes, Chris.
Archetypes. Keep going.
And I get it. They're trying to establish that Red Mist is just a racist, delinquent, rich, shithead, asshole bitch. But there's no subtlety in any of the humor in this movie, so it's just all really cringy. Then he yells at John Leguizamo's character and apologizes, saying,
You're pretty much like the only real family I have left.
well, you know, that's kinda your fucking fault, cause you killed your own mom. And also, how the fuck is he so important to you exactly? Because he's the one guy who worked for your dad that wasn't around 3 years ago when all the shit went down with Kick-Ass? I don't get why they invented this character to be his butler archetype when there's nobody like him in the comics. Can't Red Mist just figure it out on his own in the movie? I mean, he should be like 20 years old at this point, right? First movie, he literally says,
God damn it, I'm gonna be 18 in 8 months for Christ's sakes.
which kind of brings me back to my earlier point about the inconsistency with their ages. If Red Mist is 17 in the first Kick-Ass, and he's also supposed to be Dave's age, then they should both be 20. Right? I mean, I'll say it again. Why the fuck is Dave still in high school in this movie? It makes absolutely no goddamn sense at all. So we get a scene with the character Todd, and I know what you're thinking. This kid doesn't look anything or sound anything like Evan Peters. And you'd be right, because Evan Peters is not in this movie at all. He was busy doing American Horror Story, which is honestly a better use of his time. He's nowhere near as good at acting as Evan Peters is, and the writing is so fucking awful that he has nothing to work with.
Ass kicker.
Seriously, You're such a dick, Marty. I know this is why you guys aren't texting me back. I'm not an actual idiot.
Well, you could have fooled me, ass licker.
They took this shit out of the comics verbatim, but they still managed to make it less funny. Fuck you guys, I'm gonna go be a supervillain. This part doesn't happen in the comics though. Hit Girl goes on a date with that random jock from earlier, and oh no, it was a trap by the popular girls. God, it's so bad. I mean, it's like watching Cyberbully mixed with Carrie, and the result is just another cringy scene in this film. You know, come to think of it, she was also in the second film adaptation of Carrie in the title role that came out the same year as this film. Wait a minute. They abandon her in the woods and she plots her revenge on the walk home, I guess. Oh look, a shot that doesn't look flat and boring. She goes to Dave's house and is like, I'm sad. He cheers her up, and then the next day she goes to school to try to get her revenge on the popular bitches. And unlike in Carrie, where she murders all the popular kids with her telekinetic powers, she just points some kind of military device at them that makes them projectile vomit and have uncontrollable diarrhea. Haha! It's funny because they shit themselves and puked everywhere. This is by far the worst scene in the film. I mean, the whole subplot seems like it's from a different movie. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the Hit Girl comic, but at least it handled this aspect of it better. In the comic, Mindy knocks out the main popular girl in the bathroom and dangles her over the edge of the building like Batman. Pretty badass, right? Instead, they just used really awful looking CGI vomit and shit. I mean, who vomits clear liquid? No food chunks or anything? Wait, why am I nitpicking this part? Let me move on. So Dave comes home to find his dad in his room and oh no, he found the Kick-Ass costume! Their acting is really awkward and honestly, it kind of takes away from the tension that the scene should have.
I don't wear the mask because I'm ashamed of who I am. Not like you.
What's that supposed to mean?
Your life has no meaning, Dad. When you're gone, who's gonna notice?
Where the hell you going?
Oh, I'm leaving. That's what you do when you grow up.
Fuck you, Dad, I'm running away after a 2-minute argument. So Red Mist goes to see his Uncle Ralph in prison. And in case you're confused as to who this guy is, apparently he's supposed to be Frank D'Amico's brother. Except this guy doesn't look anything like Mark Strong, so it's really just confusing. Isn't that dude on Game of Thrones? He does not look Italian at all. Just saying. Ralph has John Leguizamo's character killed because movie. Oh no, I don't care at all. Wait a second. Did anyone else catch that? Check out that extra, man. Is that really the best take they had of that shot? I guess this is supposed to give Red Mist even more motivation to be a supervillain? Why does this happen? Oh yeah, because he's in the Hit Girl comic and we had to shoehorn him into this movie somehow. Oh, by the way, according to the chronology of the comics, Hit Girl straight up murders Uncle Ralph in prison after he tries to have her family killed by a gang of thugs. But you know what? Fuck it. We need his character in this movie, even though he has no further bearing on the story. So Jim Carrey shows up for maybe the 4th time in this movie, and then Red Mist and all of his cronies show up and kill him. Oh no, not the character we barely know that's only been on screen for like 10 minutes. No, no! Also, this is a really tiny detail, but I just noticed it while I was editing. So Jim Carrey gets stabbed in the first shot, and there's barely any CGI blood on him, and then it cuts to a reaction shot of a bunch of other people. And then it cuts back to him using the same footage, but this time there's more CGI blood added to his chest area. Then they added a different pattern on his camouflage jacket with CGI. Why? Why did you do this? I can literally edit these 2 clips together in one smooth motion and it just looks really weird. Maybe they had like a really angry visual effects artist that was like, fuck you, I'm only gonna do the second shot of the CGI on his jacket. I'm fed up with this fucking job. Oh, how convenient, they found Night Bitch's personal information. Why would Colonel Stars and Stripes even have that in the first place? Ah, fuck it, we need to set up the next action set piece in the movie somehow. So Mindy finds out that Jim Carrey is dead and that motivates her to become Hit Girl again. And honestly, who gives a shit at this point? So now that Red Mist knows where Night Bitch lives, he takes the gang to her house to find Kick-Ass through her. But doesn't Red Mist have any idea who Dave is? Like, he's not that stupid, right? The Hit Girl comic series ends on the cliffhanger of Red Mist knowing Dave's personal identity. But in the movies, I don't think he literally ever figures it out once. He knows who Night Bitch is, and I guess he wants to use her to find Dave, but then he just says,
Don't worry, darling. I'm not gonna kill ya. I want you to give a message to your boyfriend.
She tells him to fuck off, and then it's implied that he's gonna rape her.
It's time to see what evil dick feels like.
But, oh, ha, he couldn't get his dick up. Way to take a really dark and gritty theme and subvert it. LOL. I'm gonna bring up the comics again because this one stood out to me in the theater. In the comic, the motherfucker and his gang don't go to Night Bitch's house. They go to Katie Doma's house and do the exact same shit. Instead, it cuts away after it's implied that he's about to rape her. And guess what? He actually rapes her. I was fascinated by how disturbing the motherfucker was in that scene. It helped build his credibility as a villain to see him do this terrible, despicable, evil shit. It was only because Red Mist already knew who Dave actually was and knew that hurting Katie would get to him. Here, it's for the same reason, but the drama of the situation just vanishes when the comedy kicks in. Like, seriously, you had a prime moment to really insert some hard tension into this film, but instead you went for the flaccid dick joke. Fuck you, Universal. I can't help but blame the executives that read this comic and thought, oh, you know what, people won't like that. Maybe we should make it lighthearted instead and ruin any tension that there could be. But after this moment happened, I almost walked out of the movie during the midnight premiere. I was so angry at how poorly they handled it. But I still had high hopes for the showdown, so I waited it out. And so since Red Mist can't rape Night Bitch, he delivers the most cringy line in the film.
I guess evil Dick feels limp.
Hurt her. Bad.
Jesus Christ, McLovin. You really do not have that much acting range, do you? Mother Russia goes outside and starts murdering cops in a sequence of gratuitous violence. In the comics, this is supposed to be a disturbing sequence, but in the movie, they're playing a metal version of the Tetris theme song. Get it? Because Russia? They completely ruined this whole part of the story by making it comedic. I mean, all the drama of the situation is gone because they wanted to make something to put in the trailer, I guess. In the comics, Chris also murders like 6 kids and a couple of neighboring families before they even go into Katie's house. And it's a much more chaotic scene. But I guess you can't do incredibly gruesome things like that in a mainstream comic book movie made by a major studio. So why cop out and make it worse? Fuck you, that's why. In response to 10 officers getting brutally murdered, the cops start arresting anyone who dresses up like a superhero. And this includes Kick-Ass, or it would if he were home. Instead, his dad takes the blame. Dave visits Night Bitch in the hospital, and then the scene is over. On his walk home, Dave sees his dad getting arrested and tries to stop the cops, but his dad goes to jail anyways. So Kick-Ass goes to the jail to visit his dad, and his dad's like, they'll let me out in 24 hours since Kick-Ass isn't being charged for any crimes, but you gotta stop being a superhero. And then Dave is like, okay, Papa, I will. So then not Evan Peters shows up to the lair of the toxic mega cunts. Yeah. That's what they actually call themselves in the film. It was stupid in the comics too, so there's nothing new here. He tells them that Dave's dad was arrested instead. Then a couple of guys that worked for D'Amico who were somehow only in jail show up and murder Dave's dad. Dave's reaction to this news genuinely made me burst into laughter.
What is it? Dude, what's wrong?
I regret nothing. Such good acting, oh man. Then there's a funeral scene and he really doesn't look all that sad, even though he's supposed to be crying. Damn, so believable. Then once more, a gang of D'Amico's men show up and try to murder everyone there. Or maybe just kidnap Dave, I guess that's all that happens. Somehow Hit Girl caught up to them and got on top of the van. Oh look, it's the action scene from the trailer. Yes. So she murders all of them except for the driver, who she then tortures in the middle of nowhere. And Dave's like, man, I don't want to do this shit. They torture him and he tells them the address of the warehouse that the motherfucker's gang is hiding in. But in the comic, Hit Girl kills the driver and drives straight to the warehouse in the same van, causing a misdirection. A little bit of something called dramatic irony. Then they find out from one giant fucker in the gang that there's supposed to be a terror attack in Times Square later that night. And that's where the showdown of the comic happens, in Times Square, not a fucking warehouse. I guess Universal was just too cheap to film in Times Square and just decided that, you know, why spend the money on CGI or location shooting when you can just shoot in a fucking warehouse? This is the point where the film and the comic go two completely different directions. In both versions, she still calls her police officer stepdad and tells him not to worry, but then the movie has to give another motivational scene just like the last film because sequel, I guess. In the first movie, it works because Hit Girl has motivation following the death of her dad. And then she uses this as motivation for both her and Kick-Ass, not willing to take his pussy ass shit. But in the sequel, she motivates him this time, again, even though all the motivation should lie on Dave's shoulders with his dad being killed, his girlfriend being raped. Oh look, an adrenaline needle. That won't be important later. So the toxic mega cunts or whatever plan their attack, but then Justice Forever shows up and walks right into the warehouse. Well, there's no security or anything? Oh, okay. Throughout the movie, they put a lot of stress on how comical it is to have a giant shark tank in your secret lair. So of course it needs to be implemented into the finale, right? Since it's easier to film in a warehouse, they figured that was the ultimate way to defeat a skinny 20-year-old who's only killed one person by accidentally electrocuting her to death, and who has no actual superpowers. Remember how in the first film the climax was Frank D'Amico getting blown the fuck up with a bazooka after Kick-Ass mows down all of his henchmen with 2 miniguns on the back of a fucking jetpack? That was cool. This is just lame as shit. Anyways, both the motherfucker and Kick-Ass are trying to avenge their dead dads, so a fight breaks out. They fight, and they fight, and they fight some more, and it just looks like a bunch of cosplayers at Comic-Con. Instead of a brutal showdown in Times Square where people are literally getting sliced open in the streets, let's do this instead. That doesn't look dumb. Hit Girl is almost easily murdered by Mother Russia, but then she uses the adrenaline needle before stabbing Mother Russia to fucking death. Hey look, not Todd used the vomit thing from earlier. We really needed that to be reincorporated in the finale. I don't think I have much sarcasm left in me, guys. I'm sorry. Oh look, I guess the motherfucker and Kick-Ass do have a rooftop fight like in the comics. Gotta love that awful green screen effect. So Kick-Ass knocks into the glass and the motherfucker tells him to let go, and then he just basically knocks himself to his death. Dave feels guilty that he allowed someone to die though. Wait, why exactly is that? I mean, you fucking blew his dad up with a goddamn bazooka, and you didn't feel bad at all. Why all of a sudden are you overcome with guilt? This is a moment from the comic book that is not earned here at all. In the comic, Dave loses his shit and nearly beats Chris to death with his batons before knocking him off the roof and into an alleyway. Chris begs Kick-Ass to call him an ambulance and promises not to rat him out to the cops, finally accepting that he can't fight for shit, and he's just a scared kid who almost died because of all the awful shit that he started. Dave is overcome with guilt because suddenly the situation hits him. He almost murdered someone and he feels awful. It's an earned moment for Dave because he finally understands the weight of his actions as a vigilante superhero, even though he's a high school kid who just wanted to help people. But then the movie fucks all of this up and just makes him feel bad anyways. Fuck logic. So Red Mist survives the fall, but then the sharks eat him. Like, I don't know what else you expected to happen. Then the movie just ends with Hit Girl leaving New York because she doesn't want to burden her stepdad. And she kisses Dave, and it's not earned at all. Like, there's no reason for that to be payoff to anything. Also, isn't the age difference between them like 10 years? It's kind of weird, right? No, it's not weird, because she's an actress. They're actors in movies. Okay, whatever. You know what? I'm going to bring up the comics one last time because it's such a much more powerful ending than this movie. The comic ends on a cliffhanger with Hit Girl distracting the cops away from Dave after they spot him near Chris's dying body. So she steals a cop car and eventually crashes it since she doesn't want to murder any cops. Both her and her stepdad are arrested, and the last image of the second book is Hit Girl entering a police van. What a great cliffhanger, right? Maybe the studio thought, well, everyone deserves a happy ending. Plus, who knows if there'll even be a third movie? Let's just let her leave without saying anything to her stepdad. Fuck it. The end. So it turns out I had way more to say about this movie than I thought. Its inconsistencies with the comics ultimately make for a dull action film that isn't nearly as interesting or engaging as its predecessor. Like, I literally stopped caring before the warehouse scene. It was just so poorly adapted. And I know there are pretty big differences between the first movie and the first comic as well. However, Kick-Ass is a better movie because it was made by a team who cared about it and treated the property with love and respect. Not to mention, they had more than one credited writer on the script. Something that Kick-Ass 2 definitely could have benefited from. Did it end Jeff Wadlow's career? I mean, no, it wasn't like the worst thing anyone's ever seen, so it didn't need to go that far. In fact, as of the moment that I posted this video, he's got several other projects in the works. He also followed up Kick-Ass 2 with a shitty Kevin James action comedy for Netflix, so hopes aren't too high for Jeff Wadlow. Overall, Kick-Ass 2 is a disappointment. I know it's kinda petty to endlessly compare it to the first movie and the comics that it's based on, but it's a sequel. It had high expectations and it failed to live up to the success. I can't blame anyone else but the studio for the awful handling of the timeline and the characters. And I can also blame the director for making a really bland action movie that spends 30 minutes focused on stupid high school drama. The payoff of the finale is nowhere close to how epic the ending of the first movie is. I'm not saying that nobody should like this film. If you enjoy this film, that is perfectly fine. That is your opinion. You are allowed to enjoy whatever you like. I just think that everybody should acknowledge the truth, which is that this movie could have been way better than it is, and ignoring its flaws is irresponsible as a movie lover. Fans of the first may not have been as upset as I was when they saw the sequel, but as a fan of both the comics and the first movie, it was disappointing as hell. I don't think anyone really cares about this movie anymore, but I had to get all this off my chest. Hey, Universal, please don't make a third Kick-Ass film and embarrass yourselves even more. It's really not worth it, especially since you didn't even keep the second film in theaters that long following a really disappointing opening weekend. Just let the franchise end with the third comic series, please.